Welcome to the FIsionaries podcast. I'm your host, Jim Maroos. This is a special day because this is one of our live interviews we're doing at CoLab 2025, sponsored by Alchemy in Nashville, Tennessee. What a great location, the Gaylord Hotel. I'm here today with Chad Gramling from 3Rivers Credit Union.
Yes.
And you're from Fort Wayne.
Correct.
And what we're going to be discussing today is the importance of data, analytics, and personalization in a financial institution. You're a rather modest-sized financial institution. How big is your organization?
Today we're about 2.5 billion, probably about 113, 114 members, or 1,000 members.
Yeah. And how many branches?
26.
And tell us a little bit about your background. It's interesting because you've been to 3Rivers for quite some time.
I have. As I like to say, it started in the late 1900s, 1999, fresh face out of college. Was just myself, a vice president of marketing, and a part-time marketing clerk who did some basic reporting and supply orders. So they said, we need somebody to do some desktop publishing, some brochures, the typical traditional marketing stuff.
Yeah.
And, oh yeah, we have this little website. Internet might be a thing, I don't know. Update that from time to time. And that quickly became the bulk of my job and later transitioned into a role specifically on web development and online banking. Turned out the internet was a thing. And then I migrated into product management, implemented our first 2 mobile banking solutions, and then moved more into the data side of the house. Just about the 20-year mark of my career, moved into business intelligence full-time, and it's really been a wonderful experience ever since.
It's interesting because your background is similar to what mine was. I started in the branch system, moved to the marketing area.
Okay.
Did marketing for financial institutions for about 10 years, then worked on the supplier side then it was a direct marketing agencies that only worked with financial institutions. But again, we were playing with data, trying to personalize messages. Not a different, pretty much the same mission as we have today, but with a whole lot more tools today.
Right.
So during your more recent career path, where you were working more with data and analytics, what's been the biggest change at 3Rivers with regard to how you use data, how you collect data, and more importantly, how you deploy information and solutions against that data?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Deploying that insight is the key there. And I think in a lot of cases, the technology has caught up with the dream. And the dream was always to be more personal, to be more relevant, to be more timely, to speak directly to the consumer on the level that shows that you know them and that you understand them and you want to help them with their finances. Getting that achieved in a well-orchestrated manner was not always the easy method, or not really the easy thing to accomplish.
Yeah.
So what has really changed, though, is there's an emphasis. We spawned out of marketing. As I said, I spent 20 years in marketing. Then we formed a business intelligence group that actually spun out of marketing and went into IT. And then around the same time, maybe a year later, our digital member experience group spawned out of marketing. So what was once one consolidated marketing group turned into 3. And today, now that we've had some years under our belt to develop on our own, grow, we're actually consolidating back together under one growth center.
Is that an opportunity or a challenge when you separated?
It was really, I think some folks expected it. Some of the folks that helped engineer that to happen, our CEO especially, I don't think at the time we understood that's what was going to happen. So it was really neat to kind of forge a new path, but then come back together and unify those synergies. And what we can do now is really take that to the next level and personalize the experience and to really, like I say, achieve the dream that we've had for a long time.
You know, it's interesting because back when you separated the units. I mean, I remember marketing. We used to have to claw at the IT department to give us information about the results of our programs. You know, we'd have a choice between, do you want your target audience or do you want the results of your previous program? And we're building target audiences without a full deck of cards
Right.
because you couldn't get the information in time. Having the people in the data area
Yes.
come out of marketing, you knew those challenges and you were
Right.
able to actually work on behalf of marketing to that degree, as well as other departments.
Yes, for sure.
So when you look at the deployment of data, the deployment of information at 3Rivers right now, have you expanded the realm of who's able to access the information, who's able to access the insights, who's able to access and actually deploy against those beyond just marketing?
Yeah, there's a lot of directions I could take that question, and the short answer is yes. For me, a real big imperative of having data is democratizing the data throughout the organization. That has
Man, you're
always
talking
been
my language area. I love that.
that has always been one of my strongest desires. And so when we did build the business intelligence group, build a data warehouse, started funneling in other extracts and creating almost a consolidated, unified view of the consumer. We were able to actually then build the dashboards, deploy the dashboards to the organization to show here's where you're trending on your production. Here's opportunities that have come up. We want to get those more real time, more focused on those sorts of opportunities. We say opportunities because it's not so much product push, but it's here's something that's happening in the life of a consumer or a business that you actually serve, and you might want to be aware of that. And now you can actually do that follow up and manage that relationship and continue to live out that mission. We say a lot of time, credit union, we're all built on the foundation of people helping people. I always amend that to say we are people helping people help themselves.
Yeah.
And that's really what our mission and our focus is to actually empower the consumer to have a more financially healthy lifestyle and livelihood. And I think data is one of the most important pieces of that, because without that, you don't know how to help them.
Well, it's interesting because for years, the credit union industry talked about we're for our members. We're doing this for our members. We have friendly people on the front line. Well, as we've gone into a much more digital environment where people are accessing their accounts and not going to the branches nearly at the rate they were before, that access to data, that democratization of data, that ability to address each member's needs and their desire for financial wellness really goes far beyond being friendly.
Absolutely.
And your organization really has done this. What was the biggest shift in the way data was being used? Because you've been on the front edge of that the whole time. What was your vision? And go back maybe 10 years, maybe it's only 5 years to say, what was the change in the way you looked at what you're going to do with data rather than just understanding your members, really saying, we've got to use this for our members?
Right. Man, that's, again, a lot of different ways that we could spin that, but and not really spin, but we could wax poetic on that all day long. It really comes down to the way that our consumers exist today. They expect the companies that they work with to know them, to understand them, and I personally take offense. I've never been the type that is, we got to be like this competitor, or we got to be like this competitor, or we got to do this because so and so's doing this. But as an industry, we should be offended that Credit Karma knows our members better than we do.
Yeah.
And to me, that's where I take a little bit of offense. And so I'm kind of going more on my tangent here, but it's more, and I use this analogy a lot, is there's always been this trepidation of, well, we don't want to pry too deeply into our members' finances because it's their privacy and they don't want us to infringe on that. And we don't want to be Big Brother. And it's really not about being Big Brother. It's not about being creepy. It's about understanding who we serve and how we can serve them better. And I use the analogy, if somebody doesn't want to tell us about their finances or where they want to go, it's almost like we get in an Uber and tell the driver it's none of their business where I'm going.
It's a great analogy. I like that.
We are here.
You won't get there.
That's right. We're here to take you to someplace you want to go. We need that information, and we utilize that information to get you there.
It's interesting because I look back on my career and the way we tried to target people and try to help them. And the reality is you're right. People get concerned about if you know too much about me.
Right.
But if you're not letting your financial institution know about you,
Right.
you're really going to have our hands tied behind our back.
Yep.
On the other hand, we also don't want the old days where if you sat down with a financial planner, they take all this paperwork, and you saw them put it in their side drawer, and you said you knew at that moment, I'm not as valuable as
Right.
the last 3 people you visit and the next
right.
3 people you're going to visit. That's never going to come out of your drawer. I think what you're doing at 3Rivers is you're really trying very hard to make it so we're going to do as much as we can
Yep.
to not make it so we don't show you value. Because again, my conversation point is we're paying Amazon
Yep.
about $130, maybe $150 a year now to give us targeted impressions. We're not doing it for free delivery because they get free delivery everything. We're not doing it for overnight delivery because I think almost everybody can get overnight delivery. We're not doing it for movies. We're not doing it for books. Why are we doing that? Because we don't want to let go of that relationship that right now has been trusted. We have a strong value transfer, and we have the ability to really show they have the ability, as Uber does,
Yep.
on a regular basis saying, we're utilizing your information for your benefit. And as I claim a lot, the biggest problem with many financial institutions, they don't show the customer
Right.
that they know them,
Yep.
that they understand them. How do you do that at 3Rivers? How do you work to make it so your members understand you're paying attention, you're out for their good
Yep.
rather than your good?
Yeah, and that is a great question, and I think that's where a lot of us get hung up. I think for us, it's really about unifying that experience across the different channels and platforms. And we've done our surveys, we've talked to our members, and we know we are a digital first society. Digital, members will tell us, yes, digital is my preferred. If I were given the option of digital, personal, or hybrid, digital first. Then number 2, hybrid.
Yeah.
The people matter. But they're not going to be my first go-to.
Well, it's interesting because during your career,
Right.
we went from branch being supported by not digital, but we'll say digital,
Yep.
to now digital being the primary and the branch being the support. And it's interesting because it changes how you communicate, the answers you provide,
Right.
and the way you provide them.
That's right. Yep. And if you're sending one message across one channel and a counter message on another channel, all of a sudden, then you've lost that trust. The consumer knows, okay, they don't have their stuff together. They aren't really knowing me. They don't know how to move me forward.
And in
then
the
they're going to look
reward
for it
sense,
somewhere else.
Exactly. In the reward sense, they're not really providing me solutions. They're in the old days, they're providing the car loan offer in the fall. They're providing the equity credit offer in the spring. Everybody's getting this offer, and it's a mass mailing through digital.
Yep.
And we're trying to avoid that. Now, how do we talk a lot about personalization and AI.
Yep.
We use, as I've seen in the industry, mostly we're using AI for back office efficiency, for automation. We're using it for fraud and risk heavily. That's where we used it first.
Yep.
How is 3Rivers at a modest size leveraging AI today to deliver more personalized communication engagement?
Yeah, and that is a good question. I will say we are probably more on that side of the realms of focusing our AI efforts on the operational side.
As most are.
Yeah. It's when you start tying your data to AI, that's a sort of a different security area that I don't think we've really broached that yet.
Is that a mission of yours?
Someday,
To some degree?
absolutely. It's to help us make that informed awareness and understanding. At the end of the day, it's important for us to be able to leverage those emerging technologies. We don't necessarily want to leverage them before their time because that could create some hardships, some issues. For us, on the personalizing sense, that's we're leveraging a lot of the tools we get through Alchemy and our other partners that we work with to get an understanding of what's going on in their life right now, to understanding through their transactional activity what type of personas they are, what sorts of things. You mentioned auto loans, going on a cyclical approach. we tend not to think on a seasonal calendar any longer. It's
Right.
not, oh, it's spring, we got to do auto loans and mortgages, and now it's summer, we got to do checking accounts, and then we'll do debit card. It's not like that any longer. We're always on with all of our offers, and it's a matter of being personal, timely, and relevant to when we're presenting those opportunities to our members.
Yeah.
It's okay, great. You sent me a postcard in the spring for an auto loan. Where were you 6 months ago when my car was breaking down and I needed a car? And I ended up going to a dealer and getting my loan through a different financial because you didn't know me well enough to know I was having struggles.
Right.
We're able to start identifying those sorts of things and understanding, okay, this person is doing frequent auto repairs, or this person does have an automobile that's in a breakdown range. So it's using that knowledge and then making that timely and relevant offer.
So you're actually tracking events,
Yes.
payments. Are you tracking flows of funds?
Yes. Yep.
Congratulations. Because that's my biggest frustration in our industry as a whole, is that we have so much information.
Yep.
My business bank and my personal bank knows
Yes.
that I'm transferring money between those two twice a month.
Right.
Yet never has either organization referenced that and said, we can make this easier.
Yeah.
They both know my mortgage. They know my mortgage payment, which means they know my interest rate,
Right.
because they know when I got it. They know where I got it from. They know my car loan. They know my Robinhood account. They know my Acorns account. Yet they've never referenced the fact
Wow.
that we could do this better.
Yep.
That's almost the holy grail at this point,
Yep.
without getting into things that are PII, maybe.
Indeed,
And
yes.
and what is the biggest change you've seen? I'm going to take a short span over the last 3 years.
Yep.
And as you look to the next some years, what right now what are you most proud of over the last 3 years that you've done that makes that connection with your members stronger? And what's on the table right now you're working on?
Wow. Obviously, there's a lot of pride in what we've built from a data infrastructure with the data warehouse and with leveraging some of the partnerships that we have with Alchemy and other folks like Savvy Money and
Yeah.
the segment tools. We definitely have a stronger beat on the pulse of the member, and not, we always say in the industry, well, when a member removes their direct deposit, that's too late. We should have known before that. Well, now we do, and we can start and we can start to identify those signals, and then be there with that awareness, with that reach out. Again, that's where the person comes in. It goes a lot further to have a branch manager that you work with regularly call you than here's an email saying, don't forget about us, that sort of thing. You need to be very proactive in that regard.
So you democratize the data down to the branch level where they can take access of things and
Yes.
can reinforce what you're doing in the more traditional digital marketing and all
Yes.
that. So, you're obviously punching well above your weight, which is what FIsionaries podcast is all about, is organizations punching above their weight. You can't do that without management support.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about how maybe it was something that was already in place when you started the company, but how management has been able to evolve and look at the way banking and credit union association work is done differently than what they did in the past? Because we can, we can rest on, heck, you could rest on your laurels. You got 25 years under your belt at 3Rivers. You're an important cog in that wheel. But
Right.
how do we look beyond what we're doing, and how does your management team really embrace what you're doing?
I'd share candidly, and I tell this with any vendor that we're working with as we start entering into partnership levels, and I don't say this as a joke, it comes across as a joke, but I do tell them, we are a cookie cutter's worst nightmare. So if you want to block us into a cookie cutter, we're gonna challenge you, because we don't do things the typical way. And if we wanted a cookie cutter approach, that's one thing, but we're really looking for partners that we can help further what their capabilities are, at the same time furthering our own capabilities and serving our membership. Just because 7 other institutions do it one way doesn't mean that's the best way. And so we need to know what works for us, and what our members need, and then that's how we approach those sorts of relationships. And I think that sort of mentality permeates throughout most of what we do.
Which we're interesting. We're seeing that more and more in the industry where
Yep.
it's not just the vendors providing solutions to the financial institutions.
Right.
It's now the financial institutions pushing those buttons
Yes.
that are making it so the vendors have to move faster, have to change their delivery, have to change their solutions to the degree, not making it so everyone is custom,
Yeah.
but we're pushing it to new levels saying, have you thought about putting this data into
Right.
this solution for this technology?
Right.
And the reverse of that at times.
Right, and I don't say we don't say it to push and say you have to do it our way or it's the
Right,
highway.
right.
It's we're looking for flexibility and nimbleness that we can get closer to that vision rather than just trying to force our will. So that's the approach we try to take. And like I say, at the end of the day, it comes down to is how do we best serve our members and our membership.
Yeah. So data, analytics, deployment. Part that comes into that is innovation in the product side.
Right.
How has your data been used and your analytics been used to improve maybe how you deliver services to your members, how you create new services to your members? Maybe something as simple as how easily it is to open a new account or open a
Right.
new loan relationship. What have you done in that space?
That's something we're always looking at. It's always how can it be easier? How can it be better? How can the experience be less friction? That seems to be the buzz term du jour these days is frictionless experience. There's always going to be something that needs to be done, but it's I go back to like the Credit Karmas of the world and how easy it is to initiate that first step of getting into a product. And you're absolutely right. How do we replicate that level of low friction? And so we're constantly looking at that, looking at solutions, again, working with our partners to try and make that come to fruition. We've done a lot of what we sort of would call the running of the experiment of, okay, let's try it this way and see how it goes. If it doesn't work out or it's not attracting the sort of response that we're looking for, let's try a different approach. Sometimes it's just getting the awareness to the individual at the right time. But product development, again, we do surveys, we do member surveys, we do an NPS on a monthly basis. I've been overseeing that for the most part, basically since 2013.
Wow.
So I can tell you all about the historical of NPS, and we do it our way. It's not, and I get in this fight a lot, is a lot of people will contend that NPS is a satisfaction survey, and I never, ever, ever will agree with them. It's not a satisfaction survey. This is something that's going to help us determine our capacity for growth, especially through word of mouth. And so we do a lot of that, and we actually do.
Satisfaction is not enough.
Right. We do follow up with all those surveys too. We ask our member, can we contact you about this survey? And we try to honor the wishes, or we do honor the wishes if they say they do not want to be contacted. That doesn't mean we don't put a note on the account so that somebody that helps that member later on can actually bring it up in conversation. But we do also follow up, and that's an important part. And again, that's where the people are critical. Digital is important. Digital is critical. I would contend the people aspect is just as critical.
It's interesting. One of my greatest joys about doing the FIsionaries podcast is meeting people like you that work at organizations where they've made an impact, but their members or their customers are feeling that impact daily. There's so much of a connect. There's not many layers.
Yes.
But even if there are from an organizational chart, but there's not many layers between you and the member.
Right.
You and the organization, the way you deploy that insight around the organization. What's on your to-do list right now?
What's on the to-do list?
What's the biggest challenge you're trying to solve for right now?
Well, I think right now, and we're as I mentioned, we've brought our business intelligence, marketing, and digital experience together under one umbrella. So there is a little bit of reacquaintancing and sequencing and getting our synergies in place to drive that. That's probably not something that's going to take an enormous amount of time. We're already hitting our stride with that, and that's great. So the to-do list is really how do we streamline that democratization of the data? How do we make it just as relevant to our team and the opportunities that we present to them as it is to the member at the time that they have the need. And that's, to me, that's we got a little bit of cleanup to do there. I think there's still some noise and some friction in that process. And so that's definitely something that's on the horizon. Continuing to just drive towards that operational excellence is really where that resides. Definitely would like to serve more members. That's
That's the goal.
That's an important thing. And I always trying to remind our team that we have the privilege of serving people with their financial wellness. It's not they have plenty of choices. And for me,
and many of them are using them.
That's right. And that's another, we could go into the personal, the PFI's discussion as well. That's a whole other thing. And to me, I've kind of just admitted people are going to use other services. And in some cases, that might be a good thing. But it's a matter of understanding why they use those services, what they're doing with them, and then how does that relate to how we serve our members. And really, it's again, at the end of the day, it's where does that member want to go? And how do we help them get there?
You've brought together the data analytics and the digital marketing, digital connections, but it's very clear you also bring the people aspect back to the equation.
Yep.
And as a result, if you see that all of a sudden you're starting to see flow of funds where I'm transferring money to Robinhood, I'm transferring money to a new car loan, and we've missed them when they were shopping for a car.
Right.
We can make a phone call and grab them back.
Absolutely.
And the shorter the time frame is between what we want to do and when we do it, that's going to be the key. Finally, last question.
All right.
You're going to have to go back a ways because you're really advanced because you've been doing this for a while.
A little bit.
But if you want to give a financial institution that one piece of advice, and they're trying to not start their data journey, everybody's in their data journey, but actually want to make it so it's a more personalized journey, a more democratized journey. What's that one piece of key advice as you look back and you go, man, if I had known that then as I know it now, this is where I would start. This is what I would do.
Yeah, that is a great question. And we've always said more data has never been the issue. It's always how do we use the data. And when I started in '99, we had an MCIF system. MCIF is the newer folks probably don't even know what that term is. So we had an MCIF system. I avoided that. I was like, I don't want anything to do with this. I'm going to just be happy dealing with the website.
I'm going to stick with my CRM.
I'm going to do this.
You're not going to do that either.
I'm going to just do this website, and I'm going to do this online banking, and I'll be okay. But I started getting more and more pulled into the MCIF arena, and I started to understand, okay, here's how we can actually utilize this, and start, be curious. It's not to snoop or pry or big brother on the member. It's, okay, now we can start to understand this, and now we can start to see, there's pockets of opportunity with this group of members or this group of members. And this one would not be receptive to this offer. So there was that understanding, and I know this is a long way of answering your question, but it's, again, be curious. And for us, what was instrumental was we found somebody with experience in building that data infrastructure and made it an emphasis by creating the business intelligence group. We brought in that person, we created that structure, that foundation, and now we have the ability to now go out and make that something powerful throughout all parts of the organization rather than just, that's data.
Yeah.
Okay, well, don't make data the afterthought on any of your projects or your initiatives or anything. It's we need to be able to have that ability to ingest and to then transform and then to actually orchestrate and engineer that so that it can then be turned into actionable tactics and notifications and getting the whole team involved. So,
boy, I love your recommendation to be curious.
Yep.
Because especially now with ChatGPT and all the different generative AI tools, you can take data, you can put it into the generative AI tool, and you can ask it questions about what should I do with these things. I'm a financial institution. I'm trying to do this, this, and this. That curiosity, I think we've talked about it before, should start everybody's day Because if you learn how to ask the questions, which,
Right.
we go back to the days where you asked the question, you had to wait forever for the IT department to give you some answers.
That's right.
The reality is now it can be generated instantaneously. And even the more broad question that may not use specific data, the ability to say, how are financial institutions doing this?
Yes.
Or how are they addressing this issue? I think being curious is amazing.
Yep.
And again, your point of reference in saying, and to be able to make sure that you deploy against what you learn.
Yep. Have the
It
end goal
doesn't
in
do
mind.
any good if you just let everybody in your organization know everything about everybody.
Right.
If the customers don't know it.
Right.
Chad, thank you so much for being
Thank
on the
you.
show. I really
pleasure.
appreciate it.
Yep.
It's been great.
Likewise.